The morning sun had barely crested the Colorado plains when Tessa Crawford's bleeding feet finally gave out beneath her, sending her tumbling into a dusty ravine 3 miles east of Fort Lyon. She had been running for 2 days straight, her threadbare cotton dress torn at the hem, her dark hair matted with sweat and dirt, and her lungs burning with every desperate breath she dragged into her chest. Behind her, somewhere in the vastness of 1884 Colorado territory, the compound she had escaped from still stood like a prison carved from the earth itself, ruled by a man who called himself Prophet Samuel and demanded absolute obedience from the 40 souls trapped within its walls. Tessa pressed her face against the cool dirt of the ravine, tasting dust and her own tears. Her feet were shredded, the soft skin of her soles torn open by rocks, thorns, and the unforgiving terrain she had crossed in nothing but her nightdress. They had taken her shoes months ago as punishment for speaking out of turn during evening prayer. They had taken so many things from her over the 3 years since her father had died and left her an orphan at 18, vulnerable to the smooth-talking recruiters who promised community and purpose. Instead, she had found captivity. The sound of hoofbeats made her freeze. Tessa pressed herself deeper into the shadows of the ravine, ignoring the sharp stones digging into her ribs. She could not go back. Death itself would be preferable to returning to that place, to the cold basement where disobedient women were locked away in darkness, to the marriages forced upon girls barely past childhood, to Prophet Samuel's cruel smile as he quoted scripture to justify every horror. The hoofbeats slowed, then stopped. Tessa held her breath, her heart hammering so violently she thought it might break through her chest. A shadow fell across the ravine opening, blocking out the strengthening sunlight. "Easy now," a man's voice called out, rough but not unkind. "I am not going to hurt you, miss. But you are leaving a blood trail a blind man could follow, and if someone is chasing you, they will find you quick." Tessa said nothing, watching as a figure appeared at the top of the ravine. He was silhouetted against the sky, a tall man in a worn hat and duster coat, leading a paint horse by the reins. He moved slowly, deliberately, as though approaching a wounded animal. "My name is Xavier Ellis," the man continued, beginning to climb down into the ravine with careful steps. "I've got a ranch about 2 miles west of here. I was riding fence line when I spotted you falling. Those feet of yours look like they have been through hell itself." As he came closer, Tessa could finally see his face properly. Xavier Ellis looked to be in his mid-20s, with sun-bronzed skin, dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, and eyes that struck her as remarkably gentle for a man who clearly spent his life working the harsh Colorado land. His face bore the weathering of outdoor labor, but there was something trustworthy in his expression, something that made her aching body relax just slightly. "Please," Tessa whispered, her voice cracking. "Please, if they come looking, do not tell them you saw me. I would rather die out here than go back." Xavier's expression darkened with understanding. He crouched down a few feet away from her, maintaining his distance. "You ran from somewhere bad. The compound. 5 miles northeast, they call it New Eden." The words spilled out of her before she could stop them. "I cannot go back. I will not." Xavier was quiet for a moment, studying her face. Then he nodded slowly. "New Eden. I have heard talk of that place in town. Folks say strange things about it, but nobody has proof of wrongdoing, and the prophet fellow who runs it has friends in high places." He paused. "But I believe you, miss. I can see what running has cost you." Tessa felt tears burn her eyes. After so long being told she was wicked, being told her thoughts were sinful and her will was rebellious, having someone simply believe her felt like water in a desert. "Let me help you," Xavier said quietly. Let me get you to my ranch, get those feet tended to. You are safe there. I give you my word. You do not know me, Tessa said. Why would you help me? Xavier's mouth quirked in something that was not quite a smile. Because it is the right thing to do, and because I have got a sister and I would hope someone would help her if she needed it. He glanced at the sky. But we need to move. The morning is getting on, and if they are tracking you, we do not have much time. Tessa tried to stand, but the moment weight hit her ruined feet, white-hot pain shot through her legs and she cried out, collapsing back to the ground. Xavier was beside her in an instant, his hands hovering uncertainly. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to her feet. She nodded, and Xavier carefully examined the damage. His jaw tightened as he took in the full extent of the wounds, the torn flesh, the embedded thorns, the swelling. Without a word, he shrugged out of his duster and then began unbuttoning his shirt. "What are you doing?" Tessa asked, alarm creeping into her voice. "I've got an undershirt," Xavier explained calmly, revealing the thin cotton garment beneath his work shirt. "This is clean enough to wrap your feet. It is not much, but it will protect them until we get to the ranch." He tore the shirt into strips with strong, efficient movements, then looked at her again. "This is going to hurt. I am sorry." He was right. As Xavier carefully wrapped her feet, Tessa had to bite down on her lip to keep from crying out. But his touch was as gentle as possible, and she could feel him trying to minimize her pain. When he finished, both feet were bound in makeshift bandages, the pale blue fabric already darkening with blood in places. "That is the best I can do for now," Xavier said. "Mrs. Chen at my ranch is better at this than I am. She has got proper medical supplies." He stood and looked at Tessa seriously. "Now, I am going to have to carry you. The horse can manage both of us for 2 miles. Is that all right with you?" The idea of being carried by a strange man would have mortified Tessa once. But she was too exhausted, too broken, and too desperate to care about propriety. She nodded. Xavier moved with surprising care, sliding one arm beneath her knees and the other behind her back. Tessa instinctively wrapped her arms around his neck as he lifted her, and she was startled by how steady he was, how secure she felt despite the circumstances. He smelled of leather and horses and honest sweat, so different from the incense-heavy air of the compound. Getting onto the horse was more complicated, but Xavier managed it with practiced ease, settling into the saddle and adjusting Tessa so she sat across his lap, her injured feet carefully positioned to avoid the stirrups. He pulled his duster around both of them, shielding her from the sun and prying eyes. "Hold on tight," he murmured, and then they were moving, the horse setting off at a careful pace that minimized jostling. Tessa found herself pressed against Xavier's chest, hearing the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear. Exhaustion rolled over her in waves, and despite her fear, despite everything, she felt herself beginning to drift. For the first time in days, she was not running. For the first time in years, someone was taking care of her. "Stay awake if you can," Xavier said softly. "Talk to me. Tell me your name." "Tessa," she whispered. "Tessa Crawford." "Tessa," he repeated, and somehow her name sounded better in his rough voice than it ever had in the compound's prayers. "How long were you there?" "3 years. Since I was 18. My father died and I had nowhere to go. They found me in Denver, told me they could give me a home, a purpose. By the time I realized what they really were, it was too late. They do not let people leave." Xavier's arms tightened slightly around her. "But you got out." "There was a girl, 14 years old. Prophet Samuel announced she was to be married to him as his 4th wife. She was terrified, and I could not let that happen without trying to do something." Tessa's voice broke. "I tried to help her escape, but we were caught. They locked me in the basement for 2 weeks. No light, barely any food." When they finally let me out, the girl was already married to him. She would not even look at me. That is not your fault, Xavier said firmly. I should have been smarter, should have planned better. You tried to help her, that took courage. Xavier guided the horse around a cluster of sage brush. How did you get out? Prophet Samuel wanted to make an example of me. He announced that I would be married too, to Brother Josiah. He is 60 years old and already has 3 wives. I knew once that happened, I would never have another chance. So that night, during prayers, I slipped away. Everyone was focused on the service. I ran. In bare feet, Xavier said quietly. They took my shoes months ago. I had to go anyway. They rode in silence for a while, and Tessa watched the landscape pass by. The Colorado plains stretched endlessly in every direction, broken occasionally by jutting rock formations and scattered vegetation. The sky was impossibly vast, painted in shades of blue she had almost forgotten existed. At the compound, they had been forbidden from looking at the horizon for too long. Prophet Samuel said it encouraged wandering thoughts. There, Xavier said, pointing ahead. That is home. Tessa lifted her head and saw it, a ranch house built of weathered wood and stone, surrounded by outbuildings and corrals. It was not large or fancy, but it looked solid and real, built by honest work rather than scripture and control. Smoke rose from the chimney, and she could see horses in the paddocks, several head of cattle in the distance. As they approached, a small woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. She was Chinese, perhaps 50 years old, with sharp eyes that took in the situation immediately. Xavier, she called, her accent soft but her tone demanding. What happened? Found her in a ravine, Mrs. Chen. She is hurt bad. Feet are torn up, probably half-starved and completely exhausted. Mrs. Chen was already moving, gesturing for Xavier to bring Tessa inside. The spare room. Quickly now. The interior of the ranch house was simple but clean, with sturdy furniture and windows that let in generous sunlight. Xavier carried Tessa through a main room with a large stone fireplace and into a smaller bedroom that held a neatly made bed, a washstand, and little else. Put her down gently, Mrs. Chen instructed, already gathering supplies. Then go. She needs privacy. Xavier lowered Tessa onto the bed with the same care he had shown since finding her. For a moment their eyes met, and Tessa saw genuine concern in his expression. You are safe here, he said quietly. I promise you that. Then he was gone, and Mrs. Chen was there, efficient and kind as she began unwrapping Tessa's feet with practiced hands. This will hurt, she warned, exactly as Xavier had, but her touch was expert. These are very bad. You ran far. Yes, Tessa whispered. Mrs. Chen said nothing more, but her lips pressed into a thin line as she worked, cleaning the wounds with water and something that burned terribly, then applying a salve that smelled of herbs. She wrapped Tessa's feet in proper bandages, then helped her out of her filthy dress and into a clean nightgown that was several sizes too large. This was Xavier's mother's, Mrs. Chen explained. She died 5 years ago. His father, 2 years before that. It is just Xavier here now and me. I cook and keep house. Where is his sister? Tessa asked, remembering Xavier's words in the ravine. Sarah lives in town with her husband. She married a shopkeeper last year. Mrs. Chen studied Tessa's face. You are wondering if you can trust Xavier. You can. He is a good man. One of the best I have known. He barely knows me. Why would he help like this? Mrs. Chen smiled slightly. Because he is who he is. Now drink this. She held out a cup of broth. Then you will sleep. You are safe here. No one will hurt you. Tessa drank the broth, her body accepting the nourishment desperately. She tried to stay awake, tried to remain vigilant, but exhaustion had been her companion too long. As Mrs. Chen pulled a quilt over her, Tessa's eyes drifted closed, and for the first time in 3 years, she slept without fear. When Tessa woke, the light slanting through the window was golden, suggesting late afternoon. She lay still for a moment, disoriented, her body aching but less desperate than before. The events of the morning came back slowly, and she felt a flutter of panic before remembering where she was. Safe. Xavier had said she was safe. A soft knock sounded at the door. "Miss Crawford," Xavier's voice. "Are you awake? Mrs. Chen made soup if you are up for eating." Tessa pushed herself upright, wincing as the movement pulled at her sore muscles. "Yes, come in." Xavier entered carrying a tray. He had cleaned up since the morning, his hair damp and his clothes changed to fresh work trousers and a simple shirt. He set the tray on the small table beside the bed, then stepped back, maintaining a respectful distance. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Better. Sore, but better." Tessa looked at the soup, thick with vegetables and chunks of meat. Her stomach cramped with hunger. "Thank you for everything. I do not know how to repay you." "You do not need to repay me," Xavier said firmly. He pulled the room's single chair closer to the bed and sat down, his expression serious. "But we need to talk about your situation. If this prophet Samuel is as powerful as you say, he might come looking for you. He might come here." Fear spiked through Tessa. "I should leave. I should not bring trouble to you. That is not what I am saying." Xavier held up a hand. "You are not going anywhere until those feet heal, but I need to know what we might be facing. Does he have men who will search for you?" Tessa nodded slowly. "He has devoted followers. 10, maybe 12 men who do whatever he says. They are not all bad people, but they believe in him completely. They think he speaks for God. Are they violent? They can be. Not openly, not in ways that leave marks people can see, but yes." Tessa clutched the quilt. "If they find me, they will take me back, and then—" She could not finish the sentence. Xavier was quiet for a moment, clearly thinking. "All right. Here is what we are going to do. You will stay here in this room while you heal. Mrs. Chen and I will be the only ones who know you are here. If anyone comes asking questions, we will say we have not seen you. My ranch is off the main road and I do not get many visitors. We should be able to keep you hidden." "And after I heal?" Tessa asked quietly. "After you heal, we will figure out your options. Maybe you have family somewhere." "Friends?" Tessa shook her head. "My father was my only family, and the compound made us cut ties with anyone from our old lives. They called it purification." Xavier's jaw tightened with anger, but his voice remained calm. "Then we will figure something else out. Fort Lyon is not large, but there are good people there. Maybe we can find you work, a place to stay where this prophet cannot reach you." "You do not even know me," Tessa said again, bewildered by his generosity. "Why would you risk so much?" Xavier met her eyes, and in his gaze, Tessa saw something she had not seen in years: simple human decency, untainted by manipulation or hidden motives. "Because you asked for help," he said simply. "And because leaving you to suffer would make me no better than the men you ran from." He stood. "Now eat your soup before it gets cold. Mrs. Chen will have my hide if I let you waste her cooking." Over the following days, a routine emerged. Tessa remained in the small bedroom, resting and healing as Mrs. Chen tended her feet with expert care. The wounds were serious enough that walking was impossible at first, and Mrs. Chen had warned that infection was a real danger. She changed the bandages twice daily, applying her herbal salves and watching for signs of fever. Xavier appeared at mealtimes, bringing food and conversation. At first, Tessa was wary, waiting for him to demand something in return for his help, to reveal ulterior motives. But Xavier never did. He talked about his ranch, about the work of maintaining it alone, about his horses and the Colorado weather and the characters who lived in Fort Lyon. He asked Tessa about her life before the compound, and she found herself sharing memories of her father, a clerk who had loved books and taught her to read when most people thought educating girls was wasteful. "He wanted me to be a teacher," Tessa said one evening as Xavier sat in his usual chair, whittling a piece of wood while she ate dinner. "He said I had a gift for explaining things so people could understand them." "Do you still want that?" Xavier asked, not looking up from his work. "To teach?" Tessa considered. "I do not know. 3 years in that place changed me. I do not know who I am anymore, separate from what they tried to make me." "Then maybe that is what you need to figure out," Xavier said. "Who Tessa Crawford is when nobody is trying to control her." The simple wisdom of this statement made Tessa's throat tight. "Who are you, Xavier Ellis, when you are not rescuing runaway women?" Xavier's mouth quirked in a slight smile. "A rancher, mostly. Not a very successful one, if I am being honest. This place was my father's and his father's before that. They knew the land, knew how to make it produce. I am still learning, but it is mine and I am free here. That counts for something." "It counts for everything," Tessa said quietly. Their eyes met across the small room and something passed between them, a recognition of shared understanding. Xavier looked away first, returning his attention to his whittling. "You should rest," he said. "Mrs. Chen says your feet are healing well, but you need sleep." "Xavier," Tessa called as he stood to leave. "Thank you for listening, for treating me like a person." "You are a person, Tessa, never doubt that." After he left, Tessa lay in the darkness, thinking about the cowboy who had found her broken and bleeding and asked for nothing in return. She thought about his gentle hands wrapping her feet, his strong arms carrying her to safety, his quiet presence that never demanded or imposed. In the compound, Prophet Samuel had preached constantly about righteousness and godliness, but Xavier Ellis, who spoke little of religion, showed more genuine goodness than anyone at New Eden ever had. 2 weeks after her arrival, Tessa took her first steps. Her feet were still tender and wrapped in bandages under the soft slippers Mrs. Chen had provided, but the wounds had closed and the danger of infection had passed. She stood carefully, gripping the bedpost for support, and then took one step, then another. The door opened and Xavier appeared with her lunch tray. He froze when he saw her standing. "Should you be doing that?" he asked, setting the tray down quickly. "Mrs. Chen said I could try. I cannot stay in bed forever." Xavier moved closer, hovering anxiously as though ready to catch her if she fell. Tessa took another step, wincing slightly but managing. A smile broke across her face, the first real smile in longer than she could remember. "I am walking," she said, wonder in her voice. "So you are," Xavier replied, and his own smile was like sunrise. Tessa took several more steps, testing her limits. When she wobbled, Xavier's hand was there instantly, steadying her elbow. The touch sent an unexpected warmth through her arm. "Easy," he murmured. "Do not push too hard too fast." "I need to get stronger," Tessa insisted. "I cannot hide in this room forever. I need to be able to move, to run if I have to." Xavier's expression grew serious. "There has been no sign of anyone looking for you. Maybe they are not coming. Or maybe they are just being patient," Tessa countered. Prophet Samuel always said patience was a virtue. He could wait months to punish someone just to prove he did not forget. "Then we will be ready," Xavier said firmly. He guided her back to the bed, helping her sit. "But for now, you focus on healing. Let me worry about the rest." "That does not seem fair to you." "Life is not fair, Tessa, but that does not mean we stop trying to do right by each other." As Tessa's mobility improved, she began venturing beyond the bedroom. Mrs. Chen put her to work with light tasks, insisting that useful occupation was good for healing minds as well as bodies. Tessa helped with cooking, with mending, with small chores that could be done while sitting. She was careful to stay away from windows, to keep out of sight of any potential visitors. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after her arrival, Tessa was helping Mrs. Chen shell peas on the back porch, an area shielded from the main road, when she heard the sound of hammering from the barn. Xavier had been working on repairs all morning, and the steady rhythm of his labor had become a comforting background sound. "He is a good man," Mrs. Chen said suddenly, following Tessa's gaze toward the barn. Tessa felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Yes, he is. He likes you, Mrs. Chen continued matter-of-factly. "I have worked for the Ellis family for 20 years. I know Xavier. He looks at you differently." "Mrs. Chen, I cannot," Tessa began, flustered. "You can," Mrs. Chen interrupted. "When you are ready. When you have healed inside and out. But you should know, he would never push. Xavier Ellis would wait forever if he thought that was what you needed." "I do not know what I need," Tessa admitted quietly. "At the compound, they controlled everything. Who we talked to, what we wore, what we thought. Even the marriages were arranged, and the wives were expected to be grateful for being chosen. I do not know what real affection looks like. I do not know if I am capable of it anymore." Mrs. Chen set down her bowl of peas and took Tessa's hand. "You are capable. You are young, only 21. You have so much life ahead of you. What they did to you was wrong, but it does not have to define you forever." Tessa squeezed the older woman's hand, grateful beyond words. They returned to their work in companionable silence, but Tessa's mind was churning. She thought about Xavier, about his kindness and his patience. She thought about how safe she felt when he was near, how her heart had started to lift when she heard his footsteps approaching. Was that affection, or just gratitude? That evening, after dinner, Xavier asked if Tessa would like to sit outside for a while. The summer evening was cooling, and the stars were beginning to emerge in the vast Colorado sky. "I have been cooped up in that room so long, I almost forgot what the night sky looked like," Tessa admitted as they settled onto the porch steps. She kept her shawl pulled close, still wary of being seen, but the porch faced away from the road and toward the open range. "It is one of my favorite things about this place," Xavier said, leaning back on his hands and gazing upward. "No matter how hard the work is, no matter what goes wrong, the stars are always there, same as they have been forever." "At the compound, Prophet Samuel said the stars were God's judgment watching us for sin," Tessa said quietly. "He made everything about fear and punishment." "That is not God," Xavier said firmly. "That is just a man using fear to control people. Real faith, the way my mother taught me, is about love, about caring for each other, about doing right even when it is hard." Tessa looked at him. "You do not talk about religion much." "I believe in God," Xavier said simply. "But I also believe God gave us common sense and compassion, and He expects us to use them. I do not need a fancy prophet to tell me that hurting people is wrong, or that helping someone in need is right." "You helped me when you could have just ridden on," Tessa said softly. Xavier turned to look at her, his eyes dark in the dim light. "I could never have just ridden on, not after I saw you." The weight of his words hung in the air between them. Tessa felt her pulse quicken. She wanted to look away but found she could not. "Xavier, I do not know how to do this," she whispered. "I do not know how to be around people normally. I do not know what is appropriate or what you expect from me." "I do not expect anything, Tessa," Xavier said gently. "You do not owe me anything. If you want to talk, we talk. If you want silence, we sit silent. If you want me to leave you alone, I leave you alone, whatever you need. What if I do not know what I need? Then we figure it out together. No pressure, no rush." He smiled slightly. "I have got all the time in the world." Tessa felt something crack inside her chest, some hard shell she had built to survive the compound. Tears welled up unexpectedly, and before she could stop them, they were spilling down her cheeks. "I am sorry," she gasped. "I do not know why I am crying." "You do not need to apologize," Xavier said. He moved slightly closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "You have been through hell, Tessa. You are allowed to cry." Tessa found herself leaning into him, and Xavier's arm came around her shoulders, solid and warm. She cried into his shirt while he held her, one hand gently rubbing her back, murmuring soothing sounds that were not quite words. She cried for the 3 years she had lost, for the girl she had tried to save, for her father who had died too young, for the innocence that had been stripped from her. And Xavier held her through all of it, asking nothing, just being there. When the tears finally subsided, Tessa pulled back slightly embarrassed. "I got your shirt all wet." "Shirt's dry," Xavier said easily. "Are you all right?" "I think so." Tessa wiped at her face with her shawl. "I think maybe I needed that. Sometimes we do." Xavier stood and offered his hand. "Come on, let me show you something." He led her off the porch and toward the barn, still holding her hand. Tessa's heart fluttered at the contact, at the simple intimacy of it. Inside the barn, Xavier lit a lantern, revealing several horses in their stalls and the neat organization of tools and tack. "This is Stella," Xavier said, stopping at a stall that held a beautiful chestnut mare. "She is gentle as a lamb. When you are feeling stronger, maybe you would like to learn to ride. Not for running away," he added quickly, seeing Tessa's expression. "Just for the joy of it. There is nothing like riding across open land with the wind in your hair, feeling free." Tessa approached the stall slowly. The horse regarded her with large, liquid eyes, then nuzzled her outstretched hand. The warmth of the animal's breath, the softness of her nose, it all felt like a connection to something pure and simple. "I would like that," Tessa said. "Learning to ride, learning to feel free." "Then we will make it happen," Xavier promised. The moment stretched between them, full of possibility. Xavier was still holding her hand, and Tessa realized she had no desire to pull away. In the lantern light, his face was all warm angles and shadows, his eyes kind and patient as always. "Xavier," she said softly, "I think I am beginning to understand what I need." "What is that?" he asked, his voice low. "Time, patience, someone who sees me as more than what happened to me." She paused. "I think I am finding all of that here with you." Xavier's thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gesture so gentle it made her breath catch. "You can have all the time you need, Tessa. I am not going anywhere." They stood there in the quiet barn, hands linked, the horse a peaceful presence beside them. It was not a declaration of love, not yet. But it was something, a seed planted in honest soil, given room to grow at its own pace. The peaceful rhythm of ranch life continued. Tessa grew stronger, her feet healing until she could walk without pain. She began helping more around the house, and Mrs. Chen taught her to cook dishes Tessa had never imagined, flavors from the older woman's homeland mixed with frontier practicality. Xavier taught her about the horses, and true to his word, gave her riding lessons on gentle Stella. The first time Tessa sat in a saddle, she was terrified. But Xavier was right there, one hand on the reins, guiding Stella in slow circles around the corral while he explained how to sit, how to hold the reins, how to communicate with the horse through subtle shifts of weight. "You are a natural," Xavier said after her third lesson, genuine pride in his voice. "Stella likes you." "I like her too," Tessa said, patting the mare's neck. From horseback the world looked different, bigger, full of possibilities. "Ready to try a short ride?" Xavier asked. "Just around the near pasture. I will be right beside you." Tessa's first instinct was fear. Being outside the corral, being exposed, it made her vulnerable. But then she looked at Xavier, at his encouraging smile, and she thought about what Mrs. Chen had said. She could not live in fear forever. She had to reclaim her life. "Yes," she said firmly. I am ready." They rode side by side, Xavier on his paint gelding and Tessa on Stella, moving at an easy walk across the ranch land. The summer sun was warm on Tessa's shoulders, and the breeze carried the scent of sage and grass. For the first time since her escape, Tessa felt something other than fear or exhaustion. She felt alive. "This is wonderful," she called to Xavier, unable to keep the joy from her voice. Xavier grinned at her. "Told you. Nothing else like it in the world." They rode for almost an hour, Xavier pointing out landmarks and boundaries of his property. He talked about his plans for the ranch, about wanting to build the herd, about maybe bringing in some sheep next year. Tessa listened, absorbing not just the words but the passion behind them. Xavier loved this land. It was part of him. When they returned to the barn and Xavier helped her dismount, his hands on her waist, Tessa found herself reluctant to step away. They stood there for a moment, very close, and she could see the exact moment Xavier registered the shift in her body language. His eyes darkened slightly, his grip on her waist tightening just a fraction. "Tessa," he said, her name a question. "I am not broken," she said quietly. "I thought I was, but I am not. I am healing because of you. You are healing because you are strong," Xavier corrected gently. "I just gave you a safe place to do it. You gave me more than that." Tessa took a breath, gathering her courage. "You gave me hope. You showed me what goodness looks like, what respect looks like, what," she hesitated, "what caring for someone should look like." Xavier's hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with infinite care. "Tessa, I do care for you. More than I probably should, given the circumstances. But I do not want to rush you. I do not want you to feel obligated or confused about what you are feeling." "I am not confused," Tessa said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "I know it has only been weeks. I know I am still figuring out who I am, but I also know that when I look at you, my heart feels lighter. When you are near, I feel safe. When you smile at me, I want to smile back. That is real, is it not?" "That is real," Xavier agreed, his voice rough with emotion. "Tessa, I have been drawn to you from the moment I found you in that ravine. Not just because you needed help, but because I saw your strength, your courage. As I have gotten to know you, those feelings have only grown. You are brilliant and kind and resilient, and I think you are remarkable." Tessa felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time they were happy tears. "May I kiss you?" she asked, the words tumbling out before she could second-guess them. Xavier's eyes widened slightly. "You want to. You do not have to. I want to," Tessa interrupted. "I want to choose this, choose you. Not because I owe you or because someone told me to, because I want to." Xavier's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Then yes, yes, you may kiss me." Tessa leaned forward, rising slightly on her toes, and pressed her lips to Xavier's. It was soft and tentative, nothing like the rough, possessive claiming she had witnessed at the compound. This was gentle and sweet and full of promise. Xavier's arms came around her, holding her close but not confining, and Tessa felt something inside her that had been frozen for years begin to thaw. When they parted, both were breathing a little faster. Xavier rested his forehead against hers. "That was perfect," he murmured. "It was my first real kiss," Tessa admitted. "My first choice." Xavier pulled back to look at her, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Then I am honored beyond measure." They stood there in the barn, holding each other, and Tessa felt a happiness she had forgotten existed. It was not just relief or gratitude. It was genuine affection, maybe even the beginning of love, growing naturally in the space Xavier had so carefully and respectfully created. That evening, Tessa helped Mrs. Chen prepare dinner with a lightness in her step that the older woman noticed immediately. "Something has changed," Mrs. Chen observed, her eyes twinkling. Tessa could not hide her smile. Xavier and we talked, and I kissed him. Mrs. Chen laughed, a delighted sound. Good, it is about time. That man has been walking around like a lovesick puppy for weeks, trying so hard to be patient and proper. He has been wonderful, Tessa said. Patient and kind and never pushing. I did not know men could be like that. Not all men are, Mrs. Chen said seriously. But Xavier is. You chose well. I did not exactly choose to fall into that ravine in his path, Tessa pointed out with a small laugh. Perhaps. Or perhaps fate knew what it was doing. Over dinner, Tessa and Xavier kept catching each other's eyes across the table, small smiles passing between them. Mrs. Chen watched with obvious satisfaction, and if she made pointed comments about young love and spring lambs, neither of them minded. After the meal, Xavier asked Tessa to walk with him again. They strolled in the twilight, and this time when Xavier took her hand, there was no hesitation from either of them. I have been thinking, Xavier said, about your future, about options. Tessa's contentment dimmed slightly. You want me to leave? No, Xavier said quickly, squeezing her hand. That is not what I mean at all. I just want to make sure you know you have choices. You could stay here, keep helping Mrs. Chen. Or I could help you find work in town, somewhere you could be independent. Or, he paused, seeming to gather courage. Or you could stay here for different reasons. Not as someone I rescued, but as someone I care about. Someone I hope might care about me too. I do care about you, Tessa said softly. But I do not want to be a burden, Xavier. You have already done so much. You are not a burden. You brighten this place. You make me want to come in from the fields instead of staying out until dark. You make me laugh. You challenge me to think about things differently. Xavier stopped walking and turned to face her. Tessa, I know it is fast. I know the circumstances are complicated. But I think I am falling in love with you. Tessa's breath caught. In the compound, declarations of love had been commands disguised as devotion, tools of manipulation and control. But Xavier's words carried no demand, no expectation. They were simply honest. I think I am falling in love with you too, she whispered. It scares me. After everything, trusting someone this much scares me. Then we go slow, Xavier said. We take our time. We build something real and solid, something nobody can take from us. I am not going anywhere, Tessa. I will be right here for as long as you want me. Tessa stepped into his embrace, resting her head against his chest and listening to the steady beat of his heart. I want you here, she murmured. I want this, whatever this becomes. Xavier kissed the top of her head. Then that is what we will have. The summer days stretched into weeks, and Tessa's life at the ranch became more than just sanctuary. It became home. She grew confident on horseback, and Xavier began taking her on longer rides across his land. They would pack simple lunches and spend afternoons exploring, Xavier sharing stories of his childhood here, of his parents and their dreams for this place. Tessa shared more of her own past too, the good memories of her father, the life they had shared before his death. She talked about her mother, who had died when Tessa was young, leaving behind only hazy impressions of warmth and laughter. She shared her dreams of teaching, of making a difference in young lives the way her father had made a difference in hers. You could still do that, Xavier said one afternoon as they sat by a creek that ran through his property, their horses grazing nearby. There is a schoolhouse in Fort Lyon. The teacher, Miss Hargrove, is getting old. She has been talking about retiring. Maybe in a year or two you could take over. Do you think they would let me? Tessa asked. Knowing I was at the compound. We do not have to tell anyone about that, Xavier said. You are Tessa Crawford, daughter of a clerk, educated and intelligent. That is all anyone needs to know. The idea took root in Tessa's mind, something to work toward, a purpose beyond mere survival. I would need to prove I am qualified, maybe study, prepare lessons. There are books in my parents' old room, Xavier offered. My mother was a reader. You could use them. Tessa leaned against his shoulder, marveling at how natural it felt. You always think of everything. I think of you, Xavier said simply. I want you to be happy, Tessa, whatever that looks like. As August arrived, bringing with it the intense heat of a Colorado summer, Tessa and Xavier's relationship deepened. Their kisses grew less tentative, more passionate, though Xavier never pushed for more than Tessa was ready to give. They talked about everything, learning each other's minds and hearts. Tessa discovered Xavier's dry sense of humor, the way he could find absurdity in everyday situations. Xavier discovered Tessa's sharp intellect, her ability to debate and question and challenge. Mrs. Chen watched it all with approval, occasionally making comments about weddings and grandchildren that made both young people blush. She is not subtle, Tessa said one evening after Mrs. Chen had made a particularly pointed remark about winter being a good time for indoor activities. Xavier laughed. She has never been subtle a day in her life, but her heart is in the right place. Do you think about it? Tessa asked, suddenly serious. Marriage, us. Xavier looked at her carefully. I think about it, but I do not want to pressure you. You have only been free a few months, Tessa. You deserve time to just be yourself, not tied to anyone. What if being myself includes choosing to be with you? Tessa countered. What if I want to build a life here? Then we would be the two luckiest people in Colorado, Xavier said softly. But Tessa, there is still the matter of the compound, of Prophet Samuel. Until we know for certain that you are truly safe from that place, I worry about making plans. His words were a cold reminder of reality. Tessa had been so caught up in her new life, in her feelings for Xavier, that she had almost convinced herself the compound no longer mattered. But he was right. The threat remained. You think they are still looking for me? She asked quietly. I do not know. But men like that, men who build empires on control, they do not like losing their power. If you were meant to be an example, your escape undermined him. He might let it go, or he might not. That night, Tessa's dreams were troubled, filled with images of the compound's dark basement and Prophet Samuel's cold eyes. She woke with a start, her heart racing. The house was quiet around her, but she could not shake the feeling of unease. Unable to sleep, Tessa wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and padded quietly to the kitchen. She was surprised to find Xavier there, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee, his own face troubled. Could not sleep either, he asked as she entered. Tessa shook her head. Bad dreams. Xavier poured her a cup of coffee and gestured for her to sit. I have been thinking. Maybe we should go into town, talk to the sheriff. Make sure he knows your situation, so if anyone comes asking questions, he is prepared. The sheriff. Tessa felt her anxiety spike. What if he makes me go back? What if Prophet Samuel has convinced him I am just a runaway who needs to be returned? Sheriff Porter is a good man, fair-minded. And you are 21 years old, Tessa. An adult. No one can make you go anywhere you do not want to go. The law does not always protect women, Tessa said bitterly. Especially not against men with money and influence. Then we make sure the law is on your side first, Xavier said firmly. We do not wait for trouble to find us. We get ahead of it. Tessa considered this. The idea of going into town, of being seen, still terrified her. But Xavier was right. Hiding forever was not a solution. All right, she said finally. We will talk to the sheriff, but you come with me. I would not let you go alone, Xavier promised. 3 days later, they rode into Fort Lyon together. Tessa wore one of the dresses Mrs. Chen had altered for her, simple but respectable, and a bonnet that helped shade her face. The town was small but bustling, with a main street lined with shops and businesses. People called out greetings to Xavier, and he returned them easily, introducing Tessa as a friend visiting from Denver. The sheriff's office was a modest building near the center of town. Sheriff Porter turned out to be a weathered man in his 50s, with keen eyes and a no-nonsense manner. He listened carefully as Tessa, with Xavier's supportive presence beside her, told her story. "New Eden," Porter said when she finished, his expression grim. "I've had my suspicions about that place for a while now. But without proof, without someone willing to testify to wrongdoing, my hands have been tied. Prophet Samuel has friends in the territorial government. He makes generous donations to certain officials' campaigns. So you cannot help me." Tessa felt despair rising. "I did not say that," Porter corrected. "I am saying it is complicated, but here is what I can do. I can make it officially known that you are under the protection of this town, that you are here of your own free will as an adult woman. If anyone tries to take you by force, they will answer to me. And I can keep an eye on the compound, see if anyone from there has been making inquiries about a missing woman." "That is more than I hoped for," Xavier said. "Thank you, Sheriff," Porter nodded. "Miss Crawford, I want you to know something. What happened to you was wrong. No matter what that false prophet might claim, keeping people against their will, forcing marriages, that is not religion. That is abuse. You did the right thing getting out." Tears pricked Tessa's eyes. Hearing an authority figure validate her experience, affirm that she was not wicked or rebellious for escaping, it meant more than she could express. "Thank you," she whispered. As they left the sheriff's office, Tessa felt as though a weight had lifted. They were still cautious, still careful, but they had taken a step toward real freedom. Xavier squeezed her hand. "Want to get lunch at the hotel restaurant? It is not fancy, but the food is decent." "I would like that," Tessa said. Over lunch, Xavier introduced her to several townspeople who stopped by their table. Everyone was friendly, accepting Xavier's explanation that Tessa was a friend without question. She met the shopkeeper who had married Xavier's sister Sarah, a round-faced, jovial man named Mr. Peterson. She met the doctor, an elderly woman named Dr. Blackwell, who had come west after the war and set up practice when no one else would take the position. "Any friend of Xavier's is welcome in Fort Lyon," Dr. Blackwell said warmly. "Lord knows that boy has helped half the town at one time or another. If you need anything, my door is always open." As they rode back to the ranch that evening, Tessa felt something new blossoming inside her. Not just hope, but possibility. She was not just hiding anymore. She was building a life. "Thank you for today," she said to Xavier as they entered the barn to tend the horses. "For standing beside me, for believing in me." Xavier turned to her, his eyes soft in the dim light. "Always, Tessa, I will always stand beside you." She kissed him then, pouring all her gratitude and affection and growing love into the contact. Xavier responded in kind, his arms wrapping around her, holding her close. When they finally parted, both were breathing hard. "I love you," Tessa said, the words coming out before she could overthink them. "I am completely, truly in love with you, Xavier Ellis." Xavier's face transformed with joy. "I love you too, Tessa Crawford. I have loved you for weeks, maybe from the moment I found you. I was just waiting for you to be ready to hear it." "I am ready," Tessa said. "I am ready for all of it, a real life, a future with you." "Are you saying what I think you are saying?" Xavier asked carefully. Tessa took a deep breath, then smiled. "I am saying I want to marry you if you will have me, not because I need rescuing or because I am grateful, but because I love you and I want to spend my life with you." Xavier laughed, a sound of pure happiness, and lifted her off her feet, spinning her around. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." When he set her down, he was grinning like a fool. "We will do it right. I will court you properly, get you a ring, ask you in the proper way." "You just did ask properly," Tessa said, "or I asked you. Either way, we both said yes." They sealed the agreement with another kiss, this one full of promise and joy and the future stretching before them. The next weeks were a whirlwind of planning. Mrs. Chen was beside herself with excitement, immediately beginning preparations for a wedding. Sarah came out from town to meet Tessa, and the two women formed an instant bond. Sarah, a cheerful woman just a year older than Tessa, welcomed her as a sister immediately. "I always wanted Xavier to find someone special," Sarah confided one afternoon as they sat together working on Tessa's wedding dress. "He has been alone too long out here, throwing all his energy into the ranch. You make him happy. I can see it in his eyes." "He makes me happy too," Tessa said softly. "He saved my life, Sarah, not just from dying but from being dead inside." Sarah squeezed her hand. "Then you are perfect for each other." The wedding was planned for late September, giving them time to prepare and allowing the intense summer heat to fade. But 3 weeks before the wedding, on a hot afternoon in early September, trouble finally arrived. Tessa was in the garden, picking vegetables for dinner, when she heard the sound of multiple horses approaching. Xavier was out mending a fence line, and Mrs. Chen was at the market in town. Tessa was alone. Instinct made her freeze, then drop low among the corn stalks. Through the green leaves, she watched as 4 men rode into the ranch yard. Her blood went cold as she recognized them. Brother Josiah, the man Prophet Samuel had intended her to marry. Brother Michael and Brother David, 2 of the prophet's most devoted followers. And leading them, on a large black horse, was a man she had only seen from a distance before Prophet Samuel himself. He was younger than she expected, perhaps 40, with a neatly trimmed beard and expensive clothes that looked out of place on a ranch. His eyes were cold and calculating as he surveyed the property. "Hello," he called out. "Is anyone home? We are looking for someone, a young woman who went missing from our community. Tessa Crawford. We are concerned for her well-being." Tessa pressed herself flatter against the earth, her heart hammering. She was trapped. If she tried to run for the house, they would see her. If she stayed here, they might search and find her. She looked around desperately for anything that could serve as a weapon. The sound of hoofbeats made everyone turn. Xavier came riding hard from the direction of the fence line, clearly having seen or heard the visitors. He positioned his horse between the men and the house, his body language defensive. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Xavier asked, his tone polite but cold. "I am Prophet Samuel, leader of the New Eden community," the man on the black horse said smoothly. "I am looking for a young woman from our congregation, Tessa Crawford. She has been missing for several months, and we are deeply worried. Her friends and family are desperate to know she is safe." "Tessa has no family at your compound," Xavier said flatly. "And I doubt she has friends there either, considering she ran from the place with nothing but the clothes on her back and her feet torn bloody." Prophet Samuel's eyes narrowed. "So you have seen her. Where is she?" "That is none of your business. On the contrary, it is very much my business. Tessa is a confused young woman who has been led astray. She belongs with her spiritual community, where we can guide her back to righteousness." "Tessa is an adult who made her own choice to leave," Xavier said, his voice hardening. "And she is under the protection of this ranch and the law. Sheriff Porter knows all about your compound and your practices, Prophet. He is just waiting for an excuse to investigate you properly." This was a bluff, as Porter had said his hands were tied without proof, but Prophet Samuel did not know that. His expression darkened. "You are harboring a member of our community against her will. That is tantamount to kidnapping." "She left of her own will, and she stays here of her own will," Xavier countered. "Now I suggest you leave my property before I make you leave." Brother Josiah spoke up, his voice rough. "The girl was promised to me. She is mine by right." "She is not property," Xavier said, his anger breaking through. And she will never be yours. Now get off my land." From her hiding place, Tessa could see the situation escalating. Prophet Samuel's hand moved toward his coat, and she knew with sudden certainty that he was armed. These men had not come to politely request her return. They had come to take her by force if necessary. She had to do something. She could not let Xavier face this alone. Tessa stood up from the cornstalks, making herself visible. "I am here." All heads turned toward her. Prophet Samuel's face split into a cold smile. "Tessa, my child, we have been so worried. Come, let us take you home." "That place is not my home," Tessa said, walking forward slowly. Her legs trembled, but she kept her voice steady. "And I am not coming with you." "You are confused," Prophet Samuel said in the tone Tessa remembered too well, that condescending, controlling voice that had haunted her nightmares. "You have been poisoned by the outside world, but we will help you. We will heal you of this rebellion." "The only thing I needed healing from was you," Tessa said. She reached Xavier's side, and he shifted his horse slightly to keep her protected. "You kept us prisoner. You forced young girls into marriage. You locked people in darkness and called it godliness. I will die before I go back to that." "You have no choice," Brother Josiah snarled. "You were promised to me. I paid the prophet good money for you." The words hung in the air, a confession of everything wrong with the compound. Xavier's expression turned murderous. "You sold her," he said quietly, dangerously. "You took a vulnerable young woman and sold her like livestock." Prophet Samuel realized his follower's mistake. Brother Josiah misspoke. "We do not sell people. We arrange marriages for the good of the community, and donations are made to support our work." "That is selling people," Tessa said. "That is exactly what it is. And it is illegal. Sheriff Porter will be very interested to hear about this." "You have no proof," Prophet Samuel said. "And even if you did, who would believe you over me? I have friends in every level of territorial government. I have lawyers and judges who support our community. You are just a confused girl with wild stories." "She is not alone in those stories," a new voice called out. Everyone turned to see a wagon approaching, driven by Sheriff Porter himself. Beside him sat a young woman Tessa recognized with a shock. It was Naomi, one of the compound's youngest wives, now clearly pregnant and very pregnant. The wagon pulled into the yard, and Sheriff Porter climbed down, his hand resting on his sidearm. "Prophet Samuel, I have been hoping for a chance to talk with you officially." "Sheriff, this is a private matter," Prophet Samuel said, his smooth confidence slipping slightly. "Not anymore." Porter helped the young woman down from the wagon. "This is Naomi Carter. She walked 10 miles to town this morning, barefoot just like Miss Crawford, and told me some very interesting things about your compound. Things that gave me probable cause to investigate. I have got a judge's warrant in my pocket, and I have got deputies on their way to New Eden right now." Naomi looked at Tessa, tears streaming down her face. "You were right. You were right to run. After you left, things got worse. He married another girl, this one only 13. Her parents tried to stop it, and he had them beaten. I could not stay anymore. For my baby, I had to leave." Prophet Samuel's mask of civility cracked completely. "You ungrateful wretch. After everything I gave you, this is how you repay me. You gave me nothing but pain," Naomi said, her voice shaking but determined. "You made me marry a man old enough to be my grandfather when I was 16. You made us all prisoners, but Tessa showed me it was possible to leave. She gave me courage." "This is ridiculous," Brother Josiah blustered. "These women are hysterical, making up lies." "Then you would not mind if my deputies take a look around your compound," Porter said calmly. "Check the records of marriages and births. Interview the members, individually and away from the prophet's influence. If everything is legitimate, you have nothing to worry about." Prophet Samuel's face had gone pale. You have no authority. I have a judge's warrant, Porter repeated. Now, you gentlemen can come with me peacefully to answer some questions, or we can do this the hard way. Your choice. For a long moment, tension hung heavy in the air. Then Prophet Samuel made his move, his hand going for the gun inside his coat. But he was too slow. Xavier's rifle was already trained on him, and Porter's revolver cleared leather in a smooth, practiced draw. Do not, Xavier said quietly. Give me a reason, please. Prophet Samuel froze, his hand still inside his coat. The other 3 men sat motionless on their horses, clearly unwilling to fight armed men for their leader. Smart choice, Porter said. He moved forward and carefully disarmed Prophet Samuel, then gestured to his companions. You 3 off those horses, hands where I can see them. The men complied, and Porter quickly had them secured. Within minutes, the sound of more hoofbeats announced the arrival of 2 deputies, who had apparently been waiting down the road for Porter's signal. As the men from the compound were loaded into a wagon for transport to town, Prophet Samuel turned to Tessa one last time. The mask was completely gone now, revealing the manipulator beneath. You have destroyed everything, he hissed. Everything I built. You destroyed yourself, Tessa said. By hurting people and calling it holy. I just had the courage to tell the truth. As the wagon pulled away, Tessa felt her legs give out. Xavier was there instantly, catching her, holding her up. She buried her face in his chest and shook, not with fear now, but with relief so profound it was painful. It is over, Xavier murmured into her hair. You are safe. It is over. Naomi approached hesitantly, her hand on her swollen belly. Miss Crawford. I am sorry for how I treated you after you tried to help me escape. I was scared, and they had convinced me that obedience was the only way to survive. Tessa pulled away from Xavier and embraced the younger woman carefully. You are here now. That is what matters. You are safe. Thanks to you, Naomi whispered. You were the first one brave enough to run. You showed us it was possible. Over the following weeks, the full extent of Prophet Samuel's crimes came to light. With Tessa and Naomi's testimony, and the evidence gathered from the compound, authorities discovered a pattern of abuse, fraud, and illegal activity that went back years. The compound was shut down, and its members were given the choice to leave or face questioning as possible accomplices. Most chose to leave, scattering to relatives or new communities, trying to rebuild lives free from the prophet's control. Several young women came forward with stories similar to Tessa's, and their testimony ensured that Prophet Samuel and his closest followers would face significant prison time. Naomi stayed at the ranch for several weeks, recovering and preparing for her baby. Mrs. Chen took her under her wing just as she had Tessa, and the 2 young women formed a bond forged in shared experience. When Naomi's baby came a healthy boy she named Thomas, Tessa was there, holding her hand through the delivery that Dr. Blackwell attended at the ranch. He is beautiful, Tessa whispered, looking at the tiny infant. And he is going to grow up free, Naomi, free to choose his own path. Naomi cried happy tears. Because of you, because you were brave first. Eventually, Naomi moved into town, where she found work at the hotel and began building her own life. But she remained close with Tessa, and their friendship would endure for decades. The wedding took place on a perfect September afternoon, with the Colorado sky blue and endless overhead. It was a small ceremony held at the ranch, with Sarah and her husband, Mrs. Chen, Sheriff Porter, Naomi and her baby, Dr. Blackwell, and a handful of other Fort Lyon residents in attendance. Tessa wore the dress she and Sarah had made, simple but beautiful, with lace at the collar and cuffs. Xavier wore his best suit, his hair neatly combed, looking nervous and happy in equal measure. They stood before a circuit preacher, a kindly old man who spoke of love and partnership rather than obedience and submission. When Xavier slipped the ring on her finger, a simple gold band he had saved months to buy, Tessa felt her heart swell with joy so pure it was almost painful. This was real. This was her choice. This was love. I, Xavier Ellis, take you, Tessa Crawford, to be my lawfully wedded wife, Xavier said, his voice strong and clear. I promise to honor you, respect you, and love you all the days of my life. I promise to stand beside you as an equal partner, to support your dreams as you support mine. I promise to give you freedom, even as I give you my heart. Tessa's voice trembled as she spoke her own vows. I, Tessa Crawford, take you, Xavier Ellis, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you with all the courage you helped me find. I promise to build a life with you based on trust and respect and honest affection. I promise to be your partner, your friend, and your love, for all the years we are blessed to have together. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Xavier's kiss was tender and full of promise. The small gathering cheered, and Mrs. Chen wiped away happy tears. The celebration was modest but joyful, with food and music and laughter. As the sun set and stars began to emerge, Xavier led Tessa away from the gathering to the porch where they had shared so many conversations. "Are you happy?" he asked softly, holding both her hands. "More than I ever thought possible," Tessa answered honestly. 6 months ago, I was running for my life with bloody feet and no hope. Now I am standing here as your wife with a future stretching before us. It feels like a miracle. You created your own miracle, Xavier said. By being brave enough to run, brave enough to trust me, brave enough to fight for your freedom, I am just blessed that you chose to share your life with me. I will choose you every day, Tessa promised, for the rest of my life. They kissed under the stars, and it felt like a beginning. The first year of their marriage was not without challenges. The ranch demanded constant work, and money was tight. Tessa learned the rhythms of frontier life, the endless cycle of chores and maintenance required to survive. But she also found joy in the work, in the sense of building something with Xavier, in the freedom to make her own choices about how to spend her days. She began studying in earnest, preparing to eventually take over the Fort Lyon school. Xavier would find her in the evenings, poring over his mother's old books by lamplight, making notes and planning lessons. He supported her dreams completely, never questioning her right to pursue them. They faced opposition too. Some in town whispered about Tessa's past, about the scandal of the compound. But most people, seeing the happiness of the young couple and knowing Xavier's character, accepted Tessa fully. And those who did not learned quickly that Xavier would not tolerate anyone speaking ill of his wife. The winter of 1885 was harsh, with heavy snows that isolated the ranch for weeks at a time. But Tessa found beauty in the forced solitude, in the long evenings spent by the fire with Xavier, talking and laughing and learning each other in new ways. They made love with tenderness and passion, creating intimacy that healed wounds Tessa had not even realized she carried. In the spring, Tessa discovered she was pregnant. The news brought mixed emotions: joy at the new life growing inside her, but also fear born from seeing too many young women at the compound trapped by motherhood. Xavier sensed her conflict immediately. "What is wrong?" he asked when she told him, seeing the worry in her eyes. "I want this baby," Tessa said quickly. "But I am afraid too. At the compound, children were used as tools of control. Women could not leave because they would not abandon their babies. I do not want that for us." Xavier took her hands. "This baby will never be a tool of control. This baby is a choice we made together out of love, and if teaching is still your dream, we will find a way to make it work. Mrs. Chen would be happy to help with childcare and we will figure out the rest together." "You would do that?" Tessa asked. "Support me working even with a baby?" "Of course," Xavier said, looking genuinely confused that she would question it. "Tessa, I married you because I love who you are, all of who you are, including your intelligence and your dreams. A baby changes things, yes, but it does not change the fact that you get to decide what you want from life." Tessa kissed him, overwhelmed with love for this man who saw her as a whole person, not just a wife or a mother, but as herself. Their daughter was born in November of 1885, delivered by Dr. Blackwell with Mrs. Chen and Xavier in attendance. It was a long labor, and Tessa drew on every bit of strength she had gained over the past year and a half. When the baby finally emerged, squalling and perfect, Xavier cut the cord with shaking hands and placed their daughter on Tessa's chest. "She is beautiful," Xavier whispered, his eyes wet. "Just like her mother." They named her Clara after Tessa's mother. Clara Ellis entered the world as a completely free person, unburdened by the darkness of the compound, surrounded by love. Motherhood was harder than Tessa expected, but also more rewarding. She marveled at this tiny person who was part of her and part of Xavier, who had her father's dark eyes and her mother's determination. Even through the sleepless nights and constant demands, Tessa felt blessed. True to his word, Xavier supported Tessa's continued studies. When Miss Hargrove announced her retirement in the spring of 1886, Tessa applied for the teaching position. The school board interviewed her thoroughly, testing her knowledge and her ability to handle a classroom. Despite some concerns about her youth and her gender, they ultimately offered her the job, swayed by her obvious passion and qualifications. That fall, Tessa Crawford Ellis became the teacher at Fort Lyon School. Mrs. Chen watched Clara during school hours, and Xavier adjusted his ranch work to be home in the evenings to help with the baby. It was exhausting, balancing work and motherhood and marriage, but Tessa had never been happier. She proved to be an excellent teacher, patient and creative, able to explain complex ideas in ways her students understood. The children adored her, and their parents appreciated the dedication she brought to the role. Tessa found particular joy in working with the girls, in showing them that they could be strong and intelligent, that they had choices about their futures. Naomi's son Thomas was among Tessa's students when he was old enough for school, and seeing him thrive, seeing Naomi build a successful life running the hotel with a new husband she had chosen for herself, gave Tessa profound satisfaction. They had both escaped darkness and found light. The years passed with the steady rhythm of frontier life. Clara grew into a bright-spirited child who loved horses and books in equal measure. In 1888, Tessa gave birth to a son they named Henry, after Xavier's father. The children brought noise and chaos and immeasurable joy to the ranch. The compound, once so terrifying, became a fading memory. Prophet Samuel died in prison, unrepentant to the end. Most of the compound's former members built new lives, though a few struggled with the transition to freedom. Tessa occasionally heard from women she had known there, letters thanking her for her bravery, telling her about their own journeys to independence. Xavier's ranch slowly prospered as he gained experience, and the land became more productive. They were never wealthy, but they were comfortable, able to provide for their children and save a little for the future. Xavier expanded the house, adding rooms for their growing family and creating a study for Tessa where she could prepare lessons and grade papers. On quiet evenings after the children were in bed, Tessa and Xavier would sit together on their porch, watching the sunset paint the Colorado sky in brilliant colors. They would talk about their day, about the children, about plans for the future. Sometimes they would simply sit in companionable silence, hands linked, content in each other's presence. "You ever think about that day?" Xavier asked one such evening in the summer of 1890. "The day I found you in the ravine," Tessa smiled. "Often. It was the worst day of my life and the best day of my life, all at once. The worst because of what I was running from, the best because it led me to you." "I think about it too," Xavier said. "I think about how close you came to dying out there. How easily I could have ridden a different direction that morning. How many small things had to align for us to find each other." "Fate," Tessa said softly. "Mrs. Chen would say it was fate. Maybe it was." Xavier lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles. "Whatever it was, I am grateful. You made me believe in love, Tessa. Real love, the kind that makes you want to be better, the kind that makes every day an adventure." "You gave me my life back," Tessa said. "You showed me what respect and kindness look like. You let me heal at my own pace. You never tried to control me or change me. You just loved me." "That was easy," Xavier said with a smile. "You are very easy to love." They kissed as the stars began to emerge, and Tessa felt the same spark of joy that she had felt on their wedding day. Proof that love could endure and even deepen with time. In 1892, their third child was born, another son they named Samuel, not after the prophet, but reclaiming the name for something good, something pure. Samuel Ellis came into the world peacefully, surrounded by family, and Tessa felt a sense of completion as she held him. 3 children, each one a testament to the life she and Xavier had built together. Clara, now 7 years old, was fascinated by her new brother. She would sit by his cradle for hours, reading to him from her schoolbooks, already showing signs of her mother's teaching spirit. Henry, at 4, was more interested in following his father around the ranch, learning to care for animals and mend fences. The ranch house was never quiet anymore, always full of childish laughter and questions and the beautiful chaos of family life. Mrs. Chen, now in her 60s but still spry, delighted in the children, teaching them to make dumplings and telling them stories of her homeland in China. Tessa continued teaching, taking time off when Samuel was born but returning to the schoolhouse after a few months. She had become an institution in Fort Lyon, respected and valued by the community. When the school board proposed expanding the school building to accommodate more students, Tessa led the fundraising efforts, organizing socials and auctions that brought the community together. Xavier served on the town council for several years, using his position to advocate for fair treatment of all residents, regardless of background or origin. He never forgot what Tessa had endured, and he worked to ensure Fort Lyon was a place where vulnerable people could find safety and justice. Sarah and her husband had children of their own, and the cousins grew up close, spending summers at the ranch and winters in town. The Ellis family became known throughout the region for their hospitality and kindness, their home always open to those in need. In 1895, when Tessa was 32 and Xavier 33, they took their children on a trip to Denver. It was Clara's first time seeing a real city, and her wonder at the buildings and crowds delighted her parents. They stayed in a hotel, a luxury they could now occasionally afford, and visited museums and shops. On the last evening of the trip, Xavier took Tessa to a nice restaurant while Sarah watched the children. Over dinner, he presented her with a gift, a beautifully bound journal. "What is this for?" Tessa asked, running her fingers over the leather cover. "For your story," Xavier said. "I think you should write it down. What happened at the compound, how you escaped, everything that came after. Not for publication necessarily, but for our children, so they understand what their mother survived. So they know what real courage looks like." Tessa felt tears prick her eyes. I do not know if I can. Some of those memories are still painful. Then write about the good parts too, Xavier suggested. Write about building a life. Write about love. Write about how even the darkest beginning can lead to happiness. Tessa started writing in the journal the next week. At first, the words came slowly, painfully, as she relived trauma she had worked hard to overcome. But Xavier was there, supporting her, holding her when the memories became too heavy. Gradually, the writing became cathartic, a way to process and release the last lingering hold the compound had on her psyche. She wrote about the terror of those 2 days running. She wrote about Xavier wrapping her feet and carrying her to safety. She wrote about learning to trust, learning to love, learning to be free. She wrote about her children and her teaching and the beautiful, ordinary life she had built from the ashes of her captivity. When she finished, nearly a year later, she read the entire account to Xavier. They sat together in her study, his arm around her shoulders as she shared her story in her own words. When she finished, both were crying. "You are the strongest person I have ever known," Xavier said. "And I am so proud to be your husband." "I could not have done any of it without you," Tessa replied. "You were my safe harbor, Xavier. You still are." The journal became a treasured family heirloom. As the children grew older, they each read it in turn, gaining new understanding of their mother's past and the foundation of their parents' love. Clara, who inherited her mother's teaching spirit and her father's steadfast kindness, would eventually become a teacher herself, working to educate young women about their rights and options. Henry became a rancher like his father, taking over the Ellis ranch when Xavier's health began to decline in his later years. Samuel became a lawyer, inspired by his mother's stories of injustice, dedicating his career to protecting vulnerable people from exploitation. In 1910, Tessa retired from teaching at the age of 47, having educated 2 generations of Fort Lyon children. The town honored her with a celebration, and dozens of former students came to share how she had impacted their lives. Several women credited Tessa with giving them the courage to pursue their own dreams, to demand respect in their marriages, to believe in their own worth. Xavier, now 51 and graying at the temples, stood beside his wife with obvious pride as speaker after speaker praised her dedication and impact. When it was Tessa's turn to address the crowd, she spoke from the heart. "I came to Fort Lyon with nothing," she said. "Broken and afraid, with no hope for the future. But this community embraced me. This community gave me a chance to rebuild my life. And one man in particular showed me what love could be, not control or possession, but partnership and respect and genuine care for another person's well-being. Everything I have accomplished has been possible because Xavier Ellis believed in me, because he gave me the freedom to be myself." There was not a dry eye in the room, and when Tessa finished speaking, the applause was thunderous. Retirement gave Tessa time to pursue other interests. She became active in the women's suffrage movement, traveling occasionally to give speeches about her experiences and why women needed full legal rights to protect themselves from exploitation. Her story, carefully edited to protect some of the more traumatic details, became a powerful tool for the movement. Xavier supported her activism completely, often traveling with her and watching the children or grandchildren when Tessa was away. He remained her steadfast partner, her biggest supporter, her greatest love. In 1914, on their 30th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The house Xavier had built and expanded over the years was full of family. 4 generations now, including Xavier's aunt, who had traveled from back east. As Tessa looked around at the crowded, happy scene at Clara helping in the kitchen with her own daughter, at Henry discussing ranching with Xavier and his sons, at Samuel playing piano while the youngest grandchildren danced, she felt overwhelming gratitude. This life, this beautiful, messy, joyful life, had emerged from her darkest moment. Every person in this room existed because she had found the courage to run, because Xavier had found the compassion to help. That evening, after everyone else had gone to bed, Tessa and Xavier sat on their porch as they had so many times before. The Colorado stars blazed overhead, unchanged from that night 30 years ago when they had first declared their love. "We did well, did we not?" Xavier said softly, his arm around Tessa's shoulders. "We did remarkably well," Tessa agreed, leaning into him. "3 amazing children, 7 grandchildren and counting, a life full of purpose and love. We exceeded my wildest dreams." "Do you have any regrets?" Xavier asked. Tessa considered. "Only that I did not meet you sooner, that I wasted 3 years in that place when I could have been here, free, building this life with you." "Those 3 years made you who you are," Xavier pointed out gently. "They taught you strength. They gave you empathy for others who suffer. And when you finally escaped, you knew exactly how precious freedom was. Maybe that was necessary for us to appreciate what we have." "Perhaps," Tessa conceded. "Still, I would not wish that experience on anyone." "Neither would I, but I would not change anything that brought you to me." Xavier kissed her temple. "I love you, Tessa Ellis, more today than yesterday, more tomorrow than today." "I love you too," Tessa whispered. "My cowboy, my hero, my home." They sat together until the moon rose, content in each other's presence, secure in a love that had been tested by trauma and time and had only grown stronger. The compound was a distant memory now, its power over Tessa completely broken. In its place was this rich, full life, built on foundations of respect and trust and genuine affection. As they finally rose to go inside, Xavier paused to look back at the ranch, at the land he had worked all his life, at the home that held their family. "This is my legacy," he said. "Not just the land or the buildings, but the love we have built here, the family we have created, the proof that goodness can triumph over cruelty." "It is our legacy," Tessa corrected gently. "We built it together." "Together," Xavier agreed, taking her hand. "Always together." They walked inside hand in hand, and the door closed behind them on another perfect day in a life full of them. The girl who had run with bloody feet had become a woman of strength and purpose. The cowboy who had found her had become the husband who cherished her. And together, they had created something beautiful and lasting, a testament to the power of compassion and the resilience of the human heart. Their story, which had begun in desperation and fear, had become a love story for the ages, passed down through their family as an example of what real love looked like. Not the forced affection of the compound or the romantic fantasies of novels, but the real, messy, beautiful work of 2 people choosing each other every day, building a life together through struggle and joy, hardship and celebration. Tessa Crawford Ellis lived to the age of 87, passing peacefully in 1950 surrounded by her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Xavier, who could not bear to be without her, followed just 3 months later. They were buried side by side in the Fort Lyon Cemetery, their headstones simple but bearing an inscription chosen by their children. "Together in life, together in eternity. Love without chains." The ranch stayed in the family for generations, and the story of how Xavier found Tessa and carried her home became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The journal Tessa had written was eventually donated to the Colorado Historical Society, where it became an important document for understanding the darker aspects of frontier religious communities. and the courage of those who escaped them. But more than that, it became a love story, a testament to the fact that even from the worst circumstances, even from the darkest beginnings, something beautiful can grow. That one act of kindness, a cowboy wrapping a runaway woman's feet and carrying her to safety, can change the course of multiple lives. That love, real love, is not about possession or control but about freedom and partnership, and the choice to stand beside someone through everything life brings. The legacy of Tessa and Xavier Ellis lived on long after they were gone. In the strong, compassionate people their descendants became, in the community values they had helped establish in Fort Lyon, and in the simple truth that love freely given and freely received could heal even the deepest wounds. Their story, which began with bloodied feet and desperate flight, had transformed into something transcendent, a love that had shaped not just their lives but the lives of everyone they touched. And if sometimes, on quiet Colorado evenings, people claimed to see two figures sitting together on the porch of the old Ellis Ranch house, hands linked and heads bowed together, well, perhaps some loves are strong enough to echo through eternity.